If we look at the majority of sites, a vast majority of those are still handling via more arcane technologies. Even pen and paper is still incredibly predominant.
Modern supply chains love to talk about AI, automation, and real-time visibility. But in too many yards, execution still comes down to pen, paper, people, and pressure. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to episode 124 of Resilient Supply Chain, Stories and Strategies that Keep Business Moving. I'm your host, Tom Raftery. In this roundtable episode of the Resilient Supply Chain podcast, in association with The Supply Chainer, I'm joined by Adam Newsome, CEO of Lazer Logistics, Blaine Dirker, CTO at Lazer and leader of Yard Nexus, and Pini Usha, product manager from Buffers AI. Today, we look at the yard as the place where planning, forecasting, transport, labour, trailers, docks, and inventory all collide. And the big takeaway is this: a yard problem may not start in the yard, but it often shows up there first. Before we get into it, could each of you give us a quick 30-second intro, who you are, what your organization does, and what part of this execution puzzle you see most clearly? Adam, let's start with you.
Yes, Adam Newsome. I'm CEO of Lazer Logistics. We were founded in 1996, so we've been doing this for 30 years. We currently move over 30 million trailers a year in the U.S. and Canada. So we have a really good perspective on the execution part of this. And again, as we talk about the technology and the forecasting here throughout the conversation, absolutely we're part and executes on it, but we need good information in order to do our jobs.
Great. And Blaine, your turn.
It's a great lead in from Adam as it relates to the data and information. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Lazer Logistics. And in that function, I manage as kind of the Managing Director over Yard Nexus Technologies, which develops, deploys, and supports our commercial technology solutions.
Lovely. And Pini, bring us upstream. Can you give us a quick intro and tell us, where does Buffer AI sit in this conversation?
All right. We are sitting on top of WMSR, meaning that we are doing the replenishment for store, planning the purchasing, as you said, and planning the replenishment to the stores. So we are at extra layers that's on top.
Okay, superb. And let's get straight into the first tension. We're going to talk about, is the yard really the problem, or is it where other problems finally become visible? Adam, is the yard really a problem, or is it where fragmented planning and execution become visible?
Well, it can be a combination of the two, but the yard is a natural choke point in the supply chain. And I think it's important for the listeners to understand that you'll have a warehouse. We'll just use an example here that'll be shipping 100 loads a day. Well, what happens is transportation companies want to come in, get out as fast as they can to go deliver the freight there. So what happens is they drop the trailers there on the yard, and then they want to pick up their load. So to your point, it depends. If the load's not ready, you're really just not creating any efficiency there as well. So again, that goes back to the planning. But again, it's a choke point because we may only have 2 trucks there, yet you've got 100 trucks coming in and out. So if we don't do our job, we could shut down the warehouse or delay the movement of the freight. So again, it really depends on what the situation is. We have to show up, be there with our drivers and our equipment in order to do the job. But whether or not the freight is there and efficiently moving is not always in our control, or I would say rarely in our control as well.
Okay, Blaine, yard technology and AI are getting a lot of attention. Where do companies confuse more visibility with better decision-making, would you say?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tom. And I think Adam alluded to the fact that it's a giant choke point. And so without that degree of visibility, right, the trucks can only move so fast, moving the trailers around. They have to know where they are, know what carrier and the location they're supposed to be providing to, dock door proximity, and things like that. So when you talk about technology, you're really talking about yard visibility. You may have services is perfectly humming, but on the back end, you have a bunch of trailers that have been sitting over here or out of service. And if you don't have that level of degree of visibility, it's on the back end that you're going to start feeling the pain from those charges and whatnot. So yard visibility not only helps the services side identify opportunities for more effective and efficient process, but for the customer on the back end, the ROI around the technology is really that clarity into the unseen with respect to the yard.
Fair enough. And Pini, when a truck fails to arrive or replenishment plans suddenly change, how quickly can that disruption cascade into the warehouse or yard?
Right. And this situation happens often. And while you're using system like ours, it's done automatically and it's calculated in a few seconds, and it's just all the constraints, the local constraints and global constraints, and give you immediate results. So you don't have to adjust Excels and take into consideration or call people. It's just making the adjustment itself. The system is synchronizing with the raw data, with the underlying data every few seconds, depends on the client, but usually it's every few seconds. And if there is a change in any one of the parameters, then the result, the output is going to change and be pushed back to the WMS immediately.
Okay. And for all of you, what breaks first? Is it the data, the process, decision rights?
Well, I think again, it can be all of the above. I mean, I want to be clear on that as well, because we spend most of our time, we have over 6,000 employees that work throughout the US, and we're in 44 states, plus Canada as well. So again, we have to manage the labor. So if the labor is not there, it doesn't really matter what the data says and what the system is, because you physically have to move that trailer. So for me, I spend most of my time concerned, of course, with making sure that we're safe, we're reliable. And that's where our density comes in, as we can, again, almost $800 million in revenue, the not biggest contract carrier in the US. Again, that gives us the ability to make sure we have there. But then you get to the next part of the question, which is, am I doing the right thing? Am I moving the right trailer? And as Pini said, again, you've got to have updated, because things happen. Trucks get stuck in traffic. They break down. Things happen. And those goods and what's happening with those do have an impact on the business, especially in manufacturing. A really good example might be this. And a customer that's a CPG customer is running a certain product of a certain size bottle. So we have to move the bottles in, maybe from an outside supplier there, because we'll do a short shuttle for that, because that's considered part of the yard movement. Well, suddenly the customer has a demand change from one of their big customers, and they need to change the bottle size. Well, again, that seems simple, like, oh, we just got this big order in, and we need to run the 64-ounce bottles now as well. Well, that's great, except if the 64-ounce bottles are 2 miles away and sitting on somebody else's yard. So the communication and the speed that needs to go, because as they're turning over those lines, they need that product to come in. So then it goes to the finished product, which is where then the carriers. And then, of course, you may have carriers that were set up to deliver the 64-ounce bottles versus maybe the 32. So you have to make those changes. All that requires really great coordination. And again, in today's society, in which we can all push a button on a phone and order just about anything and have an expectation that it's going to get there the next day, time is money. And so again, it's a complicated question. I certainly appreciate it as well, but I think you've got the right people on this call that can kind of address what that means for that choke. Again, sounds really easy, and today's society is amazing, but a very complicated supply chain.
I would say that the system takes a micro decision, a very straightforward, simple decision, but we do it on millions. It's a millions of decisions that happen at least once a day. And every decision is very simple. You have to move that, and if that, you have to subtract that. Very, very simple, but you have to do millions, and you have to do it very, very fast. And that's where the value comes, because we are working in millions of decisions.
And Adam, in practice, who should own yard execution? Would it be the shipper, logistics provider, technology layer, site operations team, someone else?
Well, we own the execution. I want to be really clear. And we try to give feedback that's outside maybe of the workflows there about yard conditions. Because again, if you have a yard that's too full, again, all of a sudden productivity starts going down. If you're over capacity because you have to move 2 trailers to get to 1, we have to give them safety feedback. We have to give them information around the weather as well and make sure. So we try to own that part of the execution. But again, the workflows are going to come from the customer.
Blaine, what's one decision a good yard system should help people make faster or better?
That's a great question. And I want to kind of take a little bit of a turn back to the previous topic around technology and people and process. And let me be very clear. We're very prideful of and biased relative to Yard Nexus and its capabilities and utility and function, right? But at the same time, the technology, any technology is only as good as the people and processes. So for example, we look at the gate. that is an integral point within the construct of the yard. When trailers need to get in and get out, especially through high velocity yards, if the gate clerks aren't keeping up with the data integrity, i.e. putting in the right information as far as the stack and identification information so that the driver can then in the yard find the trailer or even know it's in the yard at all, right? I think those are critical points that people and process control and the technology efforts to govern.
And Pini, where can AI help reduce volatility before it becomes a yard or a warehouse firefight?
Right. So AI is used mainly in building forecasts today. So to building forecast, you have statistical methods that are very good for short period. We're working very well for the last 50, 60 years. Statistical method like exponential smoothing was the most common and most popular forecasting. It takes seasonality, it takes everything. But in the last, I would say, 2 years, we moved to a time series foundation. That's an AI solution that Google published. It's a open source project, very successful, very popular. That's using LLM to do a better forecasting. I'm not going to go into the details, but to building the forecast today, it's involved LLM or machine learning actually to doing the forecasting. That's in one direction in our business. Everything is based on forecasting. That's the first layer. And the second layer is to find similarities. Because we are dealing many times with new products, our clients the catalog is changing very often. So the catalog changes, you don't have history. If you don't have history, you cannot build forecast. So solving that is by finding similar products. Now, nobody has a map of what's similar to what. This shirt is not similar to, if you just change the SKU, it's a different product. You don't have the history. So we have algorithm that based on text or image can find the similar product. And that's also used LLMs to do the work.
Okay, and what then do you think should be automated and what still needs human judgment, Pini?
First, the system is not plug and play. There is an integration. And then after the integration, obviously after the integration is done, the users needs to set up and adjust according to reality what happens. Lead time changes. The system doesn't know that. It's not always reflects from the ERP or WMS or YMS. It's not always reflects. So they need to change parameters. They need to set up, let's say there is a weather extreme. So they need to input into the system and they need to know what they're doing. We are trying to have the system as automated as possible, but the truth that it cannot. It still needs the user input, not too much. We try the minimum as possible, but still the user must be in the middle.
Yeah, Tom, I'd like to build on that just a little bit, if you don't mind. I think what Pini said there is extremely, extremely insightful. He said you got to have the history and you got to have the data points there in order for AI to really do anything with the data and to build. And it's amazing what it can do. So for years, again, we've developed a history on our yards. So we have all of this data. And then what large language models allow you to do is to say, what does the data mean? Because you drive yourself crazy trying to find trends and things like that, just using Excel. So we've been super impressed with that. But when I mean collecting the data for us, we're talking about the execution side. We have telematics on all of our trucks. We've had those now for almost a decade. So we have all this information about where the trucks are going, in the yard, most traveled paths, things of that nature as well. And now we can feed that into these large language models as well. Same thing with our weather. Again, we talk about coming on the weather channel or something like that as well. But weather is a very site-specific situation. And what does it mean? And again, like I say, we have hurricanes coming to our Florida operations and things. What does that mean? We have snow, rain, whatever things. Those may all have variable impacts. We have the weather data that we can then lay on top of it during these events. We certainly have analytics cameras that allow for AI so we can get to the driver behavior. What is the driver doing? They're using their phone, again, distract the driver, things of that nature as well. So you gotta have foundational systems that create data, give you a history, and again, then you can use these amazing tools that are out there to really then say, how can I do it better? And how can I drive value for my customers? Well, but I think a lot of times, and we see it in some of our competitors, they'll talk about AI and things like that. I'm like, yeah, but what are you building it on? But what is it really producing of value for the customer? I mean, showing a simulation is great, but what's it simulate? How do you use the data? So again, for us, that's where we're really focused is it driving value of decision making? In order to do that, I think Penny's exactly right. You've got to have the issue, got to have it integrated, and then you can do some amazing things that just blow my mind every day, man.
Okay. Blaine, what kind of amazing things?
Yeah, no, I'm glad I finally got a word in edgewise, but it's just a fascinating conversation, right? You talk about all these things that AI can do, but it's only as good as the data. And the issue that we run into is folks are just inundated with all that data. They don't understand or appreciate the fact that 3 months ago there was a heat wave and had this impact, or this time last year we had a blizzard, we're forecasted to have one. We should update our model to reflect. They're not going to go back through that data. Whether it's agentic AI or more traditional machine learning technologies, we're able to actually apply hysteresis and LLMs to that data to get an appreciation for the analysis of that data, right? And that speaks to Adam and Penny's point is, what do we do with that data? You just get inundated with it. So to be able to ingest it, process it, now provide proactive feedback versus reactive, oh no, we screwed up here. Maybe that's a coaching opportunity to fix. But once you start getting proactive, now you're getting out in front of that. Now you're not only seeing better effectiveness and efficiency with yard operations, but on the customer side, you get a better appreciation for how you need to manage, whether it's your DC, warehouse, your plant, whatever. And that has the upstream and downstream effects, and that plays into Penny's space.
And Blaine, what's one metric leaders should watch if they want to know whether yard execution is actually improving?
So there's a few metrics to watch out for. One in particular that we pay attention to, or two that we pay attention to in particular, are cycle and task times, right? When was the task created relative to when it was finished, and when was it started relative to when it was finished? And this is where a beautiful application of AI comes into play, because now you're able to identify coaching opportunities for particular drivers. You get a better appreciation and understanding of maybe where you're getting batch loaded here and the warehouse is getting backed up and who's responsible for that. That data really feeds the whole orchestration model and allows everyone across all sides to make appropriate decisions in near real time.
And let me give one quick example on that, Tom, that Blaine's talking about. Some of our customers over the years, we've learned they'll be loading the trailers inside. And these warehouses, as most of your listeners know, can be huge. They can have 50 doors on one side, even 100 doors on one side of the building. And they've got people working doors. They start their shift, and 4 hours later, they're coming up on the break, and suddenly you're like, I'm done loading my trailer. And it could be robotics, whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden, everybody's taking a break 4 hours later, and suddenly 100 trailer doors have to be switched out. Well, for us, we may only have 2-3 trucks out there where it is physically impossible to move that during the 15-minute break period that they have. So we have to go back to the customer with that data and say, look, you've got to help us by not breaching the doors, as we refer to it, all at one time, on batching the moves, as Blaine just said. Because then they could come back from the break and they're like, I don't have a trailer to work on. And it's all the spotter's fault, stuff like that. But that's the intersection of, again, these processes and people and the data that allows you to make better decisions for your customers as well. Because again, it's a ballet between all of this that's going on in order to keep those moves getting out the door and keep our product getting to us all in the afternoon, Amazon delivery or UPS or whoever's coming through the door today. But again, it seems simple, but there is a definite intersection here that happens at the yard.
Okay. And Penny, can you give us a concrete example where better forecasting or buffer planning changed an operational response?
Yeah, I would say that, as Adam said, the AI is used very often. And I must be honest and say that for short period forecasting, we found that statistical methods works better than the AI. And that's the truth that nobody likes to hear. But when we do a forecast for long periods, then the AI works very nice. But most of the replenishment is for short period, meaning for 3, 4, 5 days, you need to do a forecast. So statistical methods work very nice. And they work much faster and much cheaper to calculate. Because as I said, we do it in millions and we are paying tokens. So again, it's also a cost for us not paying those tokens. It's done on millions and every day. So it sums up and eventually we are a SaaS. It makes the product more expensive. So we found that statistical method works better for shorter period, while we do for longer period, we do use Google Foundation time series algorithm, but it's using the LLM, and that works very, very nicely. It works nicely because compared to statistical method that the user have to put a lot of parameters like the horizon, like the type of algorithm, like the type of smoothing, the bucketing, the alpha, there are lots of parameters that you have to be like a statistical guy to know how to control the forecast. With AI, he finds the parameters for you and it's doing it for you.
Mm.
If you're a statistical guy, and some companies, we have clients like, we are working with big clients like H&M, Procter & Gamble, so they have people that their major was statistics. So they know how to do forecasting and they know these parameters and they control it very nicely. But in other smaller company, I would say they don't have statistic people and they need something like to work automatically without any user input, like create me the forecast. And that's where the AI is doing it very nicely. It's doing it very nicely without any extra input from the user.
Okay, so I guess we got to find out whether better information leads to better decisions at the point of execution. So, Adam, what would you say still has to be learned through operational experience rather than solved by software?
It's a great question. I think, again, forecasting is everything. Let me be clear. I mean, it's just so important because, again, without that, you don't know what you need to do next. Where am I going? And there's a lot of things that, as I said, what these companies do, I'll use my bottling example again. We're talking about they will run hundreds of thousands of bottles. So you've got to plan for that. You can't just shift overnight and things like that. So those short-term replenishments and those needs that Penny was talking about, you just got to have really better forecasting. And there are some customers that do great with it, and there are some customers that really struggle with it. So I do believe that forecasting is a big thing, and predictability. Use the data to come up with predictable. Because again, the flip side is to labor. If you suddenly know you've got to work a weekend for us, well, okay, maybe your business is driving that, but we're still having to get human beings there and the trucks to make sure that we have enough people to move the trailers. So if you tell us Friday afternoon, again, it looks good on a spreadsheet, but that is a very complicated thing that you've got to do to make sure that people change their weekend plans and they're willing to come. So the more predictability you can get with the forecasting, I think that's huge. I mean, I really do believe that.
And Blaine, what assumption about yard technology usually fails when it meets real-world operations?
Well, I think it comes down to adoption, right? And so you've got the drivers who have to interface with the YMS. You've got the gate clerks that might have to engage with an appointment scheduler, an arrival process, the YMS. You got the warehouse folks that are dealing with the WMS, and the orchestration between those requires a degree of integration or somebody in a swivel seat that's taking information from over here and putting it over here. And so I think really what matters is the cohesiveness and integratability of the solutions that are driving the data that both of the other members of the panel today are discussing and walking us through.
And Pini, what would you say tends to be harder than expected when companies try to trust AI-driven planning recommendations?
Well, I would say, like Blaine said, that the data integrity is crucial in our business and it kills projects. We had a few projects that failed because of data integrity. And usually it takes the integration longer than expected because at the beginning of the project, clients do not realize how bad their data is. It's not about us, it's about everyone knows it, but they don't see it. And once they start using systems like ours, then we are getting the data and we output bad results and we go back and we see the data not good. So they try to fix it by RF or Bluetooth or any technology that they need to implement to start having real reflection of what they have and where it is. So I would say that's the main holdback for us.
And Adam, when, as you referred to earlier, when demand shifts quickly because of a disruption or market changes or shocks or switching from one bottle to another, what separates a resilient yard operation from a brittle one?
Well, I think again, density helps. So the ability to pull some resources from somewhere else. One of the biggest things is that you mentioned like weather events or a disruptive event as well. So the ability to react to the customer, again, you still got to have the physical part of this. Again, we're talking about execution on a physical level. So for me, a resilient supply chain has backup plans. And that, of course, means still labor, trucks, assets, and things that is not just an idea. But like you have, okay, I'm going to do this when this happens. I have
Mm.
resources here as well. One of the things that we do to help with that resiliency is we have what's called a rapid response team. We have about almost 100 drivers now that are not associated with any site. They help us with really two things. One is startups as we're taking on new business because you got to be seamless in your execution because the supply chain keeps going. Just because you change a vendor doesn't mean the expectation changes at all. So you have to overstaff for that. That's what we use the rapid response to. The other part is these disruptions, as you said. When there's seasonal pushes, again, we deal with a lot of beverage companies. Well, guess what? It's starting to get hot. As you can imagine, suddenly the beverages and especially the water business shoots up. So we have to have resources that we can then go to meet the need of the customer. Better forecasting allows us to do it. We know it's going to get hot every year again, but making sure what did we do? What did the staffing look like last year versus a forecast and an actual basis? That's where it's all intersect as well. So resiliency is really built upon understanding what happened, will it happen again, and what you do, and then having the resources to be able to do it. And that's where we believe we excel.
Okay. And Blaine, how do you keep operational discipline when the yard is constantly changing in real time?
That's a great question. And I think part of that is allowing for some flexibility and configurability with the technology solutions that you have in place, right? They have to be able to govern the changes, not just accommodate the changes. We take pride with our Yard Nexus, a suite of solutions that are highly site configurable because no site is the same, right? Even if it's the same customer, you're running into every different site operates a little differently. Process-wise, they're a little bit different. The expectation around the data integrity, right? As Pini alluded to, that the garbage in, garbage out may come from this site A, but site B it's clean. And so I really think that at the end of the day, the technology functions as a driver and a support mechanism, but it's Adam's side of the house and it's the boots on the ground that are really making the difference and managing any variability within the yard itself.
Okay. Penny, from the upstream planning side, where does better forecasting still fail if downstream execution is weak?
So the supply chain is built of chains of parts. So the first part is the forecast, the planning, the purchasing or manufacturing. If that fails, the whole chain is going to fail. That's the first step. So this is the critical chain, and then you have the next chain that is moving between pallets, sizes, or bins, so on. And the next chain is moving to the destination stores or warehouses or however you want. And each one of them, if it fails, the whole chain fails. The first one is the purchasing, and that's where the long forecasting and what I talked about, the Google Foundation that did the time series. So this is where we put a lot of effort to make the first step correct.
Adam, 5 years from now, will the best run yards be managed mainly by people, platforms, partnerships, all of the above?
I think it's all of the above. Again, we certainly ran some initial pilots, actually started our first pilot in 2021 using automated trucks. The yard is actually way more complicated than over the road automation because there's a series of small movements and again, capacity. You got to know where the trailer is at all times. You got to make sure you have visibility in order to truly automate the yard. So there's going to be a role, absolutely, for human beings in the future yard. And given 5-10 years from now, we don't see that really changing in that type of horizon. So the question is, though, is how can you optimize it? And I think we're asking the right questions today and talking about the right things. Again, it's all about making sure that when it gets down to the physical movement of the trailers, it's just the right move at the right time in order to drive efficiency as well. And I think that's where partnerships come in. I think that's where AI comes in and the help of it. But again, it's a lot of unknowns. But the whole thing we're trying to solve here is efficiency for the supply chain. Because we want, going back to my earlier example, we want when that carrier shows up, pick up the goods, they get into the yard as quick as possible. They find their trailer that's loaded with the goods. and then they get out of the yard and deliver to keep the supply chain moving, because that's what we're really trying to solve here as well. And again, as we discussed today, there are literally millions of data points and millions of decision making that has to be made throughout that supply chain in order to make sure that my wife can still keep ordering the goods that show up every afternoon. And I do mean every afternoon. Let me be clear.
And Blaine, what will separate companies that truly orchestrate execution from those that are just digitizing old chaos?
Yeah, and I think if we look at the majority of sites, I think we'd all agree that a vast majority of those are still handling via more arcane technologies. Even pen and paper is still incredibly predominant. And so you have to be willing to lean into technology and trust that it's going to provide the value that you assume it does going into it. And there's varying degrees of value, whether it's operational efficiency, whether it's being able to better predictability upstream and downstream. So really what it comes down to is embracing technologies. And Adam hit the nail on the head, right? If you don't know where the trailer is, whether it's the spotter, over the road, it matters not. That is wasted time. And so having an ability to have a degree of confidence that if the system says a trailer is going to be here when we say it's there, it better be there. And so that is varying technologies, whether it's RFID, Bluetooth, but also camera vision, whether that's at the gate to keep the data integrity there, or whether it's in the yard for inventory management. So it really just keeping that trailer inventory accurate and down to this trailer with a degree of confidence is at this spot really helps keep everything humming. And if you're not willing to lean into the technology to provide you those insights, you're going to find yourself in a difficult position.
Yeah, Tom, one example on that before you ask the next question was we have customers that, of course, they do business with Walmart, some of the massive retailers and stuff. And Walmart has certain cutoffs and they have expectations that they have fill orders as well. So, for example, it could be an inbound of a certain product that needs to get on this other truck that's going to deliver to a Walmart. Well, it could only be 20 feet away. But if you don't know it's there, you end up cutting the order to Walmart, and then you get penalties or whatever your commercial agreement is with them as well. The bottom line is you didn't make the sale that you wanted to make as the customer. So again, coordinate the visibility, know where it's at, even if it's, like I say, 20, 30 feet away from the dock door. But if you're scrambling around and thousands of trailers out there trying to swing doors and find the product, that's just a waste of time and efficiency as well. So again, those are just practical examples of, like I said, all those little unique decisions that end up affecting supply chain.
And if a yard is constantly chaotic, is that an operations failure? Is it a planning failure? Is it a leadership failure? Is it something else entirely?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's what we spent the last 30 years looking is bringing order to the chaos. Blaine mentioned it just a minute ago. And it's still staggering in today's age that almost 50% of almost 800 sites still don't have any sort of digitized inventory. So they're using a lot of pen and paper and stuff. So you were asking that question earlier. There is a wide disparity of the way the yards are. What we look at our job is to educate that customer and to let them know that, like, hey, here's better ways to do it. Here's better opportunity to avoid that case as well. Again, with all the experience we have and literally hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years of management experience that we've accumulated over the last 30 years, we look at it as a responsibility to get them to a better place as well. Now, whether the customer decides to make that decision or engage with that, that's kind of up to them as well. But we definitely see our responsibilities very clear. It's like, here's the better way to do it. Here's the best practices we've learned. And let me be clear, the best practices are changing now as we get better data, as we get better tools and things like that. So we have to constantly evolve and make sure that we're challenging ourselves to provide the best in class service that everybody strives for.
Okay. And Pini, could better planning eventually reduce the need for so much firefighting in yards?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first focus is you can't be 100%. It's 50% right and 50% wrong, right? It's you're right or wrong. That's how it is. But you can get a lower error rate. That's what we are achieving. Yeah. So it all starts with the planning.
Okay. I want to go into a lightning round now, folks. So it'll be a couple of questions each, one sentence answers. Adam, you're first up. What breaks first in a bad yard?
Labor. labor breaks first in a bad yard because people don't want to work there and they don't want to come to the yard if it's a bad yard.
Fair enough. Blaine, what data matters most in the moment?
The trailer inventory data.
Fair. Pini, what forecast mistake hurts fastest?
Bad events, wrong events, I would say. They enter wrong events.
Okay. Adam, people or software, which matters more?
People, always people.
Nice. Blaine, what should leaders stop measuring?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Yeah, I was.
Measure everything. Measure
Well,
everything.
and it's going to be a longer answer than a sentence to come up with an answer to that. But I think continue to measure the variable. And let me think on that a second.
I think that one of the things that we are doing is that changing the KPIs, what you are measuring. Because if you are measuring people in the warehouse, for example, how much stock you are sending out, they will exceed stock and not the right stock. So we have project that we did in many big companies like Toshiba and Hitachi, that they were counting the quantities that they were assembling and shipping out. We changed that KPI and we start measuring the right quantities and the full kit and other KPIs. So it depends on the business, but many times they want the quantities, and the quantities is not the right KPIs. The quantities go out of the warehouse or the yard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say not to stop measuring everything, but appreciate context around what is being measured.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very
Connected to value at the end of the day. Is it helping my P&L? Is it helping my customer experience? Is it helping my people? If it's not doing those things, quit measuring. It doesn't make any sense. So I agree with Blaine. It's about making sure that you're measuring the right things, not necessarily less things.
And Pini, is less inventory always smarter?
Yeah, I mean, the less is better, but you don't want to get to a stock out. You need to be on an optimal, meaning that you will get to 0 1 day before the replenishment. That's the ideal, like the chainsaw graph. But that's very tough, and you need to have safety because trucks breaks and things happen, and you cannot predict everything. So that's impossible to be. But we have KPIs that we know when you're in a good shape. And this is one of the KPI that we measure. We see how much excess inventory and stock out days you had before implementing the project. And after 3 months, we have a target, and we see that if you have, let's say, between 2-3% out of stock, meaning that zero stock, and you have like 10% excess inventory, then you are in a good shape and the project was successful. If not, we are keep working on that. So that's, I would say, the main goal of success for our system is that to bring you to the optimal stock level every day in each stock location. It's the warehouse, it's the store, it's the central warehouse, whatever it is.
And a question for all of you then. What is one thing that leaders should do before buying another tool to fix yard chaos?
Identify what the actual issue is. Don't identify a tool and then try to use that as a solution for everything. Identify the problem, evaluate that, identify the tool, technology, people, process, whatever that might be that needs to change to have the optimal effect.
Yeah, the tool doesn't solve the problem. The tool will help you solve the problem, but you don't just roll one out and say everything's great now. So again, understanding what you're trying to really solve and making sure that you're getting the right tool for the problem. As Blaine said, I think that's something that a lot of people miss. A lot of people buy the Cadillac when all they really need is just a good sedan. And so again, I think that's something that we see quite a bit out there within our customers in the supply chain.
I would say, and I see it in mature companies and new companies, that they have a good layer of raw data. They invest in RFID, they invest in cameras, they invest in that technology, they invest in good ERP, in WMS, YMS, they invest in that. That's the base layer. And sometimes they jump to a second layer for many reasons, like they buy a BI or they buy a software like ours that come on top of that, and they are not getting the expected results. And to have a solid layer of data, that's critical for everything. That's the basis.
Yeah, and Penny, I would just add to that too. It's an integrated data because again, it's taking the telematics data, it's taking the HR data, it's taking the weather, the cameras. So you got to have a good layer of data. I go back to that as well. Because again, there are some great tools, but again, if they're built or put on top of really garbage there, and again, that's one of my personal frustrations when I hear other people because I know what we spend to get those. I believe I saw the other day we're getting 30 million data points a day off of all our trucks, and that daily we're getting that type of information. And when I see people trying to sell their AI and stuff like that, I was like, what are you building it on? And it's so nice to hear Penny saying that as well. And I appreciate that because again, I think that's something that people miss in the tools, which is really a question.
Okay, good. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, folks. Is there any question that I didn't ask that you wish I did, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of? Adam, maybe you go first.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that I wish for all of us really is that an appreciation of the supply chain and how dynamic it really is. I mean, today we spent a lot of time talking about just a yard, what that means. And again, it's something that most people and even people within our industry don't think a lot because you don't think about it until it's broke in many ways. But once it's broke, suddenly nothing's happening as well. So again, I think it's just an appreciation for the supply chain and the great people and the great people that are trying to solve these problems. Again, I just go back to that so that when I go home, I've got to sit through 30 boxes that my wife bought. I just want to make sure I leave everybody with that.
Blaine?
No, I think we hit on everything pretty well. I think, right, it's people, processes, technology, right? If people aren't applying good process, if they're not adopting the technology in a way that's expected of them, you're going to get, as many as you talked already, garbage in and garbage out. And that's not doing anybody any favors. And you're essentially throwing money down the drain and then blaming it on the technology. So I think we've addressed most of those throughout the course of this dialogue. I'll just note that I've been with Lazer for 2 years. I didn't know what a yard was. I'd go past yards and I didn't even bat an eye. To the point we called out earlier, it just looked like a parking lot for trailers to me. But then you get into the weeds of it. You understand that it is a critical cog in the supply chain. And for all the bad items and headwinds that have come with the freight recession, what I do appreciate is it has actually put a microscope on the yard. Now, Adam may or may not appreciate that from a customer lens perspective, but it has really shown the value that gets driven out of good and operational effectiveness within the yard management service area.
And Pini?
Yeah, I think this period of time with the AI reminds me like 15 years ago when the cloud started to kick in and everyone moved to the cloud. And today you see who didn't move to the cloud probably does not exist, especially in software. You have to do it. And this is the time that happens with the AI and system of optimization and system like the Yard and our optimization, because I don't see any potential for growth for companies that do not invest in the IT. Sometimes their business is focused on steel or, I don't know, materials or commodities or fashion. And CTOs and or CEO do not see the value in investing such amount of time and efforts in IT. But I don't think they have the option. If they want to keep playing in this market, the IT is a critical key. Although you're doing fashion, although the IT has to be a very, very strong department. Otherwise, you won't have an option.
And Penny, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed on the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Well, they can go to the website or they can email or contact with the company, with the salesperson.
Okay, and the website is buffers.ai, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Blaine, same question to yourself. If people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed on the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, I'd like you to direct them to yardnexus.com. That gives them an overview of the Yard Nexus platform that includes the YMS, the gate solution, and the trailer location inventory management solutions that we have. And then if they have any inquiries beyond that, sales@yardnexus.com.
Great. And Adam, same to yourself?
You can send a carrier pigeon if you've got an opportunity for me. I could care less how it gets to me, but I guess the best way is lazerlogistics.com as well. But again, I'll take a telegraph, coconut, whatever you got, throw a message in a bottle. We want to do business with more customers, and we want to, again, have that opportunity. So I appreciate this, Tom, very much.
Fantastic. Great. Gents, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.